Hello and welcome to Smaulgld. In case you missed it, top gold and silver stories for the week ended August 19th, 2017. China's asset digitization strategy is not an IMF plan for a one world currency. Acchain conspiracy theory continues to spread. Bannon out as Trump chief strategist and gold and silver fall in direct response to that outing or firing. India, China, and Russia gold demand continues to be strong. Those are the stories we're going to cover today. But first, let's get into this A-chain conspiracy theory. Now, I'm only covering this not because it's of any global significance, but because many people who follow Smaulgld, the 2,200 subscribers, have heard this theory, and about hundreds of thousands, if not at least 1 million people, have seen some type of story about what I think is an entirely ridiculous theory about this A-chain ICO being connected to the IMF as a conspiracy to create an SDR one world currency that will enslave humanity by digitizing all the world's assets. That should be enough to tell you that it's ridiculous. However, I am one that is interested in speculation, and I believe that speculation is healthy, and I believe that, of course, anything is possible. However, if you are going to speculate on something, you need to know as many facts as possible, and you need to think of as many ways as possible that something that you speculate might happen. You need to go through how is it possible. And the problem with this theory is no one has explained why it's possible other than they think it could be possible. But that's not the same as explaining how it could be possible. Just saying, well, it could be possible and therefore it could be possible is not adequate analysis. Here's what we have. And the reason no one's gone through this correctly is because the issue has been obfuscated by infighting and people having horses in the race and people defending Bitcoin and people defending hard assets and people insisting that a one world currency is coming and people insisting it's not coming. That's not the way to look at this. I'm going to go through how I look at it. Maybe this isn't the way to look at it either, but I think after you listen to it, you might see that there's a lot more thought put into this than some of the other theories. Okay, so it all starts out with two pieces of red meat that you throw out there. One is there's this Economist cover, and there's going to be a world, one world currency. Get ready for it. It was on the cover of the Economist 30 years ago, and coincidentally 30 years ago is next year. When you run through the time, it was a 1988 magazine cover. So people are on lookout for how can a one world currency be ushered in. Okay, I am not saying that there's no possibility that someone is not thinking about it, that someone or entity might not be the IMF. You could take that as a given. I'm not dismissing that that's a possibility. Okay, the other piece of red meat out there is that Bitcoin and blockchain are a government, CIA/IMF, BIS creation that were designed to usher in the cashless society. And we're designed to track and trace everything we do. Again, I don't dismiss that that is a possibility. However, just one side note, there is a difference, which again, you have to understand. Some concept of blockchain and Bitcoin, you could do that if you have a centralized blockchain, which is what the A-chain blockchain is, but you cannot do it to a decentralized blockchain. You can't wrest control over it in the same manner you can if you just set up your own blockchain. Okay, so then you have this debate over whether blockchain is good or Bitcoin is good, and the people that were saying that this theory about A-chain is ridiculous painted it in terms of Bitcoin is wonderful, Bitcoin is decentralized, but that has really nothing to do with the A-chain conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory states that China, through this company, is going to set up a blockchain, and then go around and digitize the world's assets. Now, first of all, whether China digitizes assets or not is almost irrelevant. The real issue then is China buying up all the world's assets? That would be something to be concerned about. That would be something that you could say, I want to speculate about. What are China's plans to grab all the assets? They have 1.5 billion people. They need the assets. They could be rapacious. They could buy up US assets and so on. Nothing wrong with that speculation, because you can carry that through and say, yes, we can see how they could do it. The fact that they digitize them doesn't make it any more nefarious, but even so. But then to say somehow this has to do with China setting up something with the IMF through the SDR, well, now you're missing in another tire understanding of facts about the SDR. And I've been through this. The IMF's SDR is a creation of the IMF. It is a basket of 5 currencies that represent the value of the SDR, and they're issued to, and only to, other central banks. And central banks trade SDRs amongst themselves. But aha, some people say, but you don't know about private SDRs and you don't know about the market SDR. Yes, I do. Market and private SDRs are not IMF creations. All they are people or entities issuing securities denominated in SDR. And the reason the IMF is in favor of people doing that is they want to get people to think about SDRs rather than the dollar. So I can issue, and I did, a fundraising drive, and I said, send me your SDR denominated donation. And all you have to do that is pick your home currency, and then I provide a calculator how you can calculate what it is in SDRs and send it to me. The World Bank issued a SDR denominated bond, but it's payable in yuan. Why? Because there are no publicly traded SDRs. So even if you denominate your security in the market as a private SDR, you still have to pick a currency to pay it out in, because there is no SDR currency that trades freely. But then they say, but that's what this acchain thing is. China is going to issue a private SDR with all the world's assets on it, and they're not going to allow US people to own them. So first of all, then it can't even be a global currency if Americans can't belong to it. The problem with that theory is China doesn't control the IMF. They may control the AIIB, but they don't control the IMF. The IMF, in order to make any changes, has to have 85% of the member votes, and China has like 11% of those votes. Okay, well, they can join with other countries. Yeah, they could, but the chances of them getting all the other countries to agree are pretty slim. That they're going to get all the countries to agree that all the assets that they've digitized are now going to form the basis for a world currency. So, you know, France, all these countries, they're just going to sign up with China. And even if China managed to do that, the United States currently has veto power over that because they have 16% of the votes and you need 85%. But there's no incentive for China, if their plans are world domination and world enslavement, to use the IMF to do that. Why would they even do that? If they have all the assets, they've digitized all the assets, why would they go to the IMF and try to convince, in an impossible situation, convince the rest of the 188 countries that this should be a world global currency based on the assets that we own in your countries? It makes absolutely no sense to even think that China would even think that way. Now, you could say China could think they want to digitize the world's assets, they want to roll them up, they want to use them as collateral, they want to back their own currency by that. You can speculate. There's no impediments to thinking that might not happen, other than it's unlikely. But again, as I say, I am not against thinking through scenarios, but no one's thought this one through to say that it would make any remote sense that China would set up a company designed to digitize assets and then take that ICO to the IMF and get approval for it to be the new SDR. Because first of all, When you talk about a one world currency, it couldn't be if the United States wasn't involved. Second of all, we have to distinguish between a global currency and a one world currency. The dollar is a global currency. If in its current form the SDR became the global currency, there's nothing wrong with that any more than there is being the dollar is the world reserve currency. That's a global currency. In fact, if you're against dollar hegemony and it being the global reserve currency, you should favor SDRs because they include 5 different currencies, including the United States. They are the dollar, the euro, the yuan, the yen, and the pound. So if those currencies were to become in a basket, an SDR, the world's reserve currency, there's no danger of it being a one world global currency. That would just be what people then would trade. In fact, it would ensure there wouldn't be a one world currency because its value is based on 5 different currencies existing in order to provide the benchmark value for the SDR. So there's no danger in that. In fact, people who are worried about US dollar global domination would welcome an SDR. Then you say, but the ICO says SDR in it. So what? That doesn't mean that the IMF and all the member countries are going to abandon the concept of the SDR as it now is with 5 currencies and say, you know what, forget these 5 currencies. What we need to do is just base everything on what China, this ICO company, has managed to digitize to date. That is not only irrational, it doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't serve China's purpose. It doesn't serve any of the member country purposes to even think that way. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So my dismissal of this theory is not that people aren't trying to enslave the world through blockchain. That's possible. Or that there's not going to be a global reserve or world currency. Although I think that's not possible either, because how do you value anything if you don't value it in relation to something? So if you have just a one world currency, how do you price goods and services? But you could do it. So I can see how the 2 pieces of red meat, the one world currency and then blockchain being used as a tool, yes. But on these facts, on this story, they don't even add up. You cannot have a one world currency through the ACChain ICO in which Americans don't participate. You have no way of having the IMF approve. They had enough trouble getting the SDR. They're not going to create a new SDR that people are going to use, and that all the countries are going to say, yeah, that's a good idea. Why don't we just make the world's reserve currency mean anything China puts into this ICO? So whether it's tea, wheat, oil, doesn't matter. Whatever they put in there, that's what we're all going to trade off of. It makes zero sense. And what's happened is people have argued that the people that are in favor of Bitcoin and say the person who invented this theory doesn't understand Bitcoin, doesn't matter. The idea is if there's a centralized blockchain or a decentralized blockchain, not understanding the difference between the two has nothing to do with whether this theory is correct. The theory is incorrect because you can have a centralized blockchain. You can digitize assets on that blockchain. That can be a problem, but it's not an IMF SDR problem. That's what the difference is. The IMF is never, as long as there's 189 countries in it, ever going to just turn over a new currency to China. Because if that were the case and China knew it had that power, it would just issue its own currency and say, hey, from now on everybody has to use this. They're not going to get the rest of the world to say, yeah, why don't we base it on the assets, the digitized tea that China has in it. All right, now the problem is people will still, and I knew this would happen, the minute you throw something out there, it doesn't even have to be plausible, it has to be something that people think, yeah, sure, that's what those people do. Well, now you're in a position where once you've decided that an entity is evil or someone wants to do something, then all you have to do is suggest that they might have done it. Now think about that. Would you want to be tried in court by your peers based on what people thought of you, not on what you did, and just assume that, yeah, well, we don't like Joe, and someone accused Joe of murder. Well, he must have done it because someone accused him of it, without even looking at the facts, and then insisting you can't prove Joe didn't kill her. That's not the burden of proof. That we can prove that China is not planning on using the IMF to create an SDR as a world global currency based on them digitizing assets. That line of thinking is very dangerous. It's okay to speculate, but when you run against a block where you can't take the speculation further, and you can't even, and you try to conceive of ways why it might be possible, well, now you're just banging your head against the wall because you want to believe something. So I want to see somebody tell me how, not you can't prove that they're not doing it. I want somebody to explain to me the steps in which China takes. I want their incentive, and I want the steps that they're going to take to force the IMF to accept what acchain is doing and the tokens they're issuing to be a world tradable global currency around the world that enslaves us and doesn't allow Americans to own it. All right, let's move on from that. Let's talk about the news of the week. All right, so gold and silver closed down. Now, they were both up. Gold and silver were both up. They both closed down slightly. Silver more than gold. This is what generally happens. When silver goes down, it goes down more than gold. When gold goes up, it goes up less than silver. And the gold-silver ratio, is at 75.81. It's been there for quite some time. See, this week it went up. It had been as high as 78 to 1 a while back. There's Litecoin over $45. All right. This week was the anniversary, 46th anniversary of Richard Nixon. You click on that, you can see him taking the United States off the Bretton Woods gold standard. Okay, here's the first blog post I did of the week, why the SDR can't be a one world currency. It didn't go as much detail as I did here. This makes some of the same points. Silver versus the Dow is sobering luck. You want to check this one out. This one shows that basically silver is a spike and dive commodity. Does it every 30 or so years. It is not the same store of wealth that gold is. Plain and simple. And I also did one gold versus the Dow. Later this week, if I have time, I'll do silver versus the dollar index and gold versus the dollar index, but same story. Silver has more down years than up years over the last 47 years. Gold has about 65% up years versus, and the Dow has been up 72% of the years in the last 47 years. Now, the Dow should outperform silver and gold because silver and gold can't do anything to help their cause. The Dow gets help from monetary policy. It gets help from companies, people working, trying to get profitable. So in normal economies, the Dow should outperform the gold and silver. But the fact that gold manages to do so well and silver doesn't highlights that silver, no matter what you hear, is not a big time store of value. You can see it, 2 spikes and then nothing. It gets outperformed by the dollar index and the Dow. Other stories. Now, gold imports to rebound in 2017 on restocking gold monsoon. Well, they say to rebound in 2017. They already have. The first half of 2017 has been a phenomenal year for Indian gold imports. And now they're saying a monsoon is going to help it in the second half of the year. For those who don't know, Indian gold demand is largely made up of rural farmers who save their wealth in gold. And when they have a good rainy season, monsoon, they get good crops. When they have good crops, they sell enough beyond just what they need to survive, and they make money, and they have additional cash, and that cash goes into gold. India imported 25 tons from South Korea, avoiding duty, industry officials say. India seems to have relaxed. They did not go with the same tax that the people thought they would on goods and services tax, which included gold and silver. It was less than people expected, and their balance of trade has improved, so they seem to be less Looking to clamp down on gold imports. Remember, in India, gold imports are a problem because they have no domestic supply, so they got to import a lot. When they import a lot of gold, it screws up their balance of trade, but they seem to be in better shape than they were. So India, definitely good gold demand this year. Silver demand, okay, had a good month in May, but hasn't been doing as well as the gold imports. But take your U.S. Mint sales update. I update this every week. I used to do it daily, but the U.S. Mint doesn't report daily anymore because they're not selling that much gold anymore. So they're at 4,000 American Gold Eagles through the month, halfway through the month, more than halfway through the month, nothing. And then the 4,500, and through the first half, through the 19th, Silver Eagles only 235,000. So American Gold and Silver Eagle sales are way down. Now contrast that though to Perth Mint. Perth Mint has not slowed down at all. Perth Mint has been outselling the U.S. Mint in gold for the last 5 months. And silver, they're catching up. They're selling over 1 million ounces a month over at the Perth Mint. So it seems global gold and silver demand is strong, but in the U.S. it seems to be at the retail level non-existent. If you want to buy gold or silver, you can do so at the links below: BGSC, Golden Eagle Coin, SD Bullion, Money Metals Exchange. They are bullion dealers we have affiliate relations with, meaning that we're not affiliated in the sense that we are technically affiliates. We have links to their websites, and if you buy from their websites through those links, Smaulgld gets a small commission. Not investment advice to buy gold or silver. If you're interested in doing so, you've done your research, please check out, compare pricing and shipping at those dealers. And here's Nixon again on the 15th, and in the Bretton Woods. Now here's what I was talking about. Shanghai Gold Exchange withdrawals very strong in July. See, they're heading towards their third best year through July. Here's a company, 7-1M hikes gold to record high to weather market risk exposure. Outweighs Ireland, EU, and Czech Republic. So the amount of gold that they have is more than those countries have in this one particular fund. Interesting story: killing bacteria by hacking plastic with silver and electricity. Now these are the types of stories that Silverbucks say, oh well, look at all the uses of silver. Yeah, nanoparticles of silver. There's not much demand there. Same with the electricity, the electronics arguments. Electronics are getting smaller. Yeah, there's more of them. But over the last 7 years, gold demand for silver electronics has gone from 300 million ounces a year to 225 million ounces a year, even though there's more electronics bought. The electronics are smaller. Same with the solar panels. Yes, there's great demand for solar panels, but technological advances have made it such that you use less silver per solar panel. I am bullish on silver, but you can't just say, oh, it's so useful. It's so useful. Copper is everything. A lot of things are useful. That doesn't in and of itself give any metal value. It depends on how much of it. And then, of course, you take into account the manipulation. But putting that aside, even just the supply demand dynamic, it's not a strong enough argument to say silver has many uses and they're finding more every day. Yeah, how much silver is going to be used from those uses? That's what you have to know. How much silver supply is there? You have to know that. And speaking of supply, Endeavor Silver claims that they're finding some high-grade silver in Mexico. Interesting story. Go check this one out. Analysis of Roman coins tells of Hannibal's defeat and Rome's rise. Talks about the silver content in the coins that they had in Spain. Fascinating story. Great Panther also looking. This is another Mexican silver miner talking about their results of their exploration. So that's another story here. Oh, they're not exploring for silver. They're just giving up. That's not true. There's two companies right there still looking to find silver. Retail sales are up. Look like a decent economic week from the data, a little better than it normally is, but still nothing spectacular. Here's another story. Foreigner treasury buying binge accelerates in June. China, Saudi Arabia, and other countries are still adding to their U.S. treasury positions. They're not dumping treasuries. Over the last 6 months since Trump has been elected, they are adding treasuries. Here's another one. Anglo-Asian mining expects increased gold production in September in Azerbaijan. Again, we keep hearing that gold miners are stopping production. They won't mine at this price. It's not true. In fact, Australia, I think we talked about this last week, Australia has increased its budget for gold exploration. So, yes, there are companies that are cutting back, but there are also companies that are increasing either production and or exploration. Here's an interesting story. After Bitcoin, Swiss bank becomes the first to offer Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, and Litecoin. So you go to your bank and you ask them to organize a buy of these cryptocurrencies. Just a quick note on cryptocurrencies. You can be for or against them, but they are here to stay. And given that, then they have to be analyzed no different than the Republican or Democratic Party, at least for the next few years, because there are enough people that have bought into cryptocurrencies. There are enough people that are involved in the work involved in creating cryptocurrencies, the infrastructure, the hardware wallets, the all the different variations that you have. There is a substantial infrastructure, so it's not going away. Whether you're against it or I'm against it, it doesn't matter. Now, when it first came out, I thought, well, these people, well, they're really wasting their time. It's basically a computer mining game. Why would anybody ascribe value to that? I thought it was the stupidest thing I ever saw. I read the white paper and I said, yeah, I get all that, but what are you doing this? You're spinning your wheels. So you're saying we're going to mine for Bitcoin. Why would you waste your time and electricity mining for Bitcoin? And there's validity to that argument. There's no reason to do that other than someone created a system and said, this is what we want to do. Well, those days are past. There are $100 billion worth of equity in the system. So people are now willing to, quote, waste electricity. In fact, a guy in Russia, one of Putin's buddies, wants to set up a massive ICO to raise money to do Bitcoin mining. So it may be a foolish concept, depending on your point of view, or it may be total genius. It doesn't matter. It's out there now and it's going to exist. The blockchain and the blockchain technologies and the cryptocurrencies have passed the point of being looked at, scoffed at, and saying, well, they're worthless and they're going to go away. They're not. Well, they might. What I'm saying is the chances now of them going away are far less than they were 5-7 years ago. When they first came out, they could have been laughed at and they could have been laughed away and they never heard from them again. They're well past that point. So it doesn't matter what I think, what you think about them. The issue is, will they be valuable? Posting against them, warning people against them, that's not going to change a thing. No one has that power to change what people think. And remember, only 3% of the world's population can have any interest whatsoever in Bitcoin and these currencies. Doesn't matter. That's enough to create an ecosystem where value can be created. That's what people don't get. The Bitcoin fanatics think, oh, the whole world's going to use Bitcoin. It's not necessary for the whole world to use Bitcoin for it to exist and have value. And then the other side of it, the anti-Bitcoiners say, it's going to go away. It's a tulip bubble. It's got to go away. It's worthless. No. Again, I use 3%. If 3% of the world uses it, both sides are wrong. It never becomes everyone in the world using it, and it never goes away, but it can still have tremendous value if only 3% of the world uses it. And I think that's how you have to look at it, is who's going to use it? And basically, the people that are against Bitcoin say, aha, only 3%. Well, you start a business and you get 3% of the world to buy your products. I'm not going to laugh. And then the Bitcoiners think, 3%, that's nothing. This is destined to take over the world and central banking. No, maybe not. Maybe it becomes a very lucrative niche currency. It's possible. And you see on both sides, people say, I'm wrong. Maybe not. Here, Australian miners buck trend by piling back into gold. So there you go. I was just talking about that. That's another story from the week. Gold mining output at lowest level since financial crisis. So now there's the other side of the coin. It's hard to get a straight answer as to what exactly is going on. Is there more gold being mined? Is there less gold being mined? Same with silver. Is there more exploration, less exploration? Was the production going to be down this year versus last year? Are we at peak gold? No one knows. Things, they change. And you also don't get perfect information on any of this. Here, silver composition in coins confirms the story of the rise of Rome. Another interesting story. Now, this one's interesting. Before we get to the economic, here's the one. Smaulgld now accepting SDR denominated donations. This shows anyone can issue a private SDR. All you have to do is say, I'm denominating my donation request, or I'm denominating the security based off the value of an SDR. You don't have to have the IMF approval to do that. You just pick the benchmark that they publish every noon, I think every day, based on the value of the dollar, the yuan, the yen, the pound, and the euro, and you pick a payment currency, and you got it. You've got an SDR denominated security or donation or whatever you might want to have. Now, there's no incentive to do that. Why would you want to confuse people? Now, the reason you to go back to the ICO chain is if it's an international offering, well, then maybe people will think in terms of SDRs. And you can see why China would want to do that. Why? Did mention this at the beginning. China is for the SDR. Why? Because it reduces the US from 100% world global currency to just 41% when it's part of a basket of the SDR, and it raises China's value because it's part of the SDR and it's more widely used. And maybe China doesn't want to have the world's reserve currency. Maybe that's too much of a burden. Maybe they just want to have a nice standing in the SDR. All right, so if you want to donate your SDR denominated donations, go ahead, calculate it, and then send me whatever dollars or Bitcoin or Litecoin it equals in SDRs. Betting on red. Now here's another how Russia is turning its back on the US dollar. They keep turning their back on the US dollar, but they keep holding and buying US treasuries. So they may make a distinction between what reserve asset they want to hold in terms of US treasuries and what they actually want to then convert those treasuries into when they want to spend them. It's an interesting story. Mining for gold. She found the diamond. Her reaction. Oh my God. Interesting story because she pulled out a pretty low grade diamond, but she was in California where you're not really thinking that you're going to get diamonds. Bone silver found in 18th century Dutch wreck off of the UK. Okay, here's the one. U.S. economics is what I want to talk about. The University of Michigan showed again a big spike in consumer confidence. Now this is supposedly when everybody is against Donald Trump. They think the country's going to hell, and yet consumer confidence is really high. Now they did mention the fallout is likely to reverse the improvement that were recorded in August, and they mentioned that Charlottesville is more likely to weaken the economic expectations of Republicans since prospects for Trump's economic policy agenda have diminished. That's a very interesting, somewhat insightful, that the infighting amongst Republicans over Trump's statements about blame on both sides when mainstream Republicans say no, there's not, there's only blame on the white supremacist side. That battle, it may lead to McConnell, McCain, Graham, Rubio not supporting the Trump agenda, which presumably is driving consumer confidence. I'm not sure that consumer confidence is driven at all by people expecting a tax cut, people expecting the wall to be built, people expecting Obamacare to be repealed. If none of those things happen, I don't think it has anything to do with consumer confidence. It may have to do with the expectations of Wall Street and why they drove the stock market higher. But I don't think it has anything to do with the consumer confidence of people. And I don't think they even think that when they see Charlottesville. I don't think they make the connection. They say, oh, now we're not going to get our wall. So in September, we better lower our expectations for economic confidence. I don't know. It's just interesting that they try to pin everything on Charlottesville as being as having this spillover effect, and I'm not sure it does. We'll see. And again, if it goes down in September, it doesn't mean it's because of Charlottesville either. Russia's gold stack grows by 400,000 ounces in July, again showing that the Eastern gold demand is still there, still strong. Russia's going to add another 200 tons, it looks like, of gold to her reserves again this year. You go donate to Bitcoin. No, donate to Smaulgld via Bitcoin. I think that does it for the month. I mean, for the week. Yes, it does. So thank you very much for listening. If you like this, please share it. Please thumb up it. Just go to Smaulgld and subscribe, and we'll talk to you later in the week. Thank you.